What's going on, everyone? We're live. We're at Zoom Hangout. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Somewhere over here is Robert Cessna, the Eagle. I'm Travis Brown, coming to you from both the Eagle Newsroom and Eagle Newsroom Bureau, which is my apartment. But really, we're really excited for our guest today, and that is Ross Dellenger of Sports Illustrated. Ross, thanks so much for giving a few minutes of your time. I know it's been a busy couple of weeks.
Yeah, it has. No, good to be on with you guys.
Yeah, Ross is on the leading edge of everything that's been happening with the SEC and different conferences canceling and all of that. And so first off, we want to ask, what has this last couple weeks been like for you in reporting and just trying to stay up with everything? And I noticed that on Twitter, every time that things get crazy, you tweet a little glass of whiskey. What's your drink recommendation for everyone out there?
Yeah, it's been the last few weeks have certainly pushed me to drinking more than normal. It's just it's been nonstop news. It's not been a quite a normal summer. I don't think in any regard in America, in certainly the sports writing world. It has been not a normal summer. I would normally have spent most of July and in August traveling around and visiting programs and camps and doing media day stuff and writing, features and preview type stories. And now I found myself, trying to explain the hurdles of playing a football season in a pandemic. And it seems like every day we have some kind of significant news, whether it's a team pausing or suspending workouts or a conference completely canceling a fall season. It's just been constant stream and probably will continue. In fact, this week has been a little quieter, but it really hasn't been that quiet. So yeah, it's just it's been crazy.
You brought up a good point. It was quiet, and I guess because we're doing a lot of different things. High school football is ready to start. Smaller papers. But then yesterday, I see Texas Tech had so many announced, and I'm thinking like, well, maybe things are going to be okay. But you see all the Alabama students, then Texas Tech yesterday, and I go, wow, maybe we're not out of the clear for this thing yet.
Yeah, it's been several months now where administrators have expressed concern around the nation to students returning, and they all expected to have these upticks and these spikes in cases when students return for a vast number of reasons. And we're seeing like all their worst fears come to light. There are spikes pretty much, it seems like, at every campus. And although they were expected, I think in some cases they're pretty alarming as far as the exact number. You mentioned A&M. I know I just saw that Tuesday night about their 16% positivity rate.
Mm-hmm.
And that things like that are alarming. The 500 or 600 or so positives in Alabama, pretty alarming. And then you see the pictures from college towns of the parties and the streets filled with students who are not wearing masks and not socially distancing. And that's an issue because they're in a college town, they're on a college campus, they're in the college community, and they're going to be spreading the virus to people who are more vulnerable than themselves in the football team, which is trying to potentially play a season. So what we're seeing happening is campuses, and it's happened at 4 or 5 already, I believe, going virtual only, sending their kids home, or at least sending them to quarantine in their dorms, and basically having athletes as the only ones training on campus. So that's we might be seeing more and more of that. It's kind of these colleges are trying their best to create a college football bubble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So backtracking a little bit, a couple of weeks to when this all started kind of ramping up, I know that from your reporting and everything that it's seemingly like through the summer, a lot of these conferences were trying to go at this together. And then the Big Ten decided to make their announcement, the Pac-12. How much of that cohesiveness between the commissioners was fractured, and how cohesive was that group from the people you talked to and from what you've been reporting?
Yeah, you go back to April and May, and you kind of heard, in a way, one voice coming out of at least the Power Five, but in a way, all the FBS conferences, and hey, we're working together. We're on calls every week. We're in lockstep, or we're trying to be. And then it gets to where, late June into July, and you start seeing the regionalization that is America. I mean, we're a big country spread across a lot of land. Each region has their own political views and cultural ideals, and you start to see that. That's why we, probably don't have one all-powerful college football commissioner like the NFL and the NBA and other pro leagues, is because we are spread out, and each conference has a group of members that are in a different region from another conference and have different situations. And so we are seeing that more than ever come to light. The pandemic has certainly exposed kind of the fractured nature of the NCAA. So right now it's just about as fractured as I've ever seen it, among the conferences and between the conferences in the NCAA as well in Indianapolis. And feels like we're coming to somewhat of a boiling point here, because there's certainly anger and frustration all the way around.
Ross, I was wondering, in your reporting, because I know from even your days, Ellis, you're so connected, do such a great job. The three power conferences that are moving forward with football, do you feel that they're in contact more with each other, or you think they're all pretty much acting separately?
As far back as July, late July, and it still might be the case now, the Power Five commissioners were on a call, I think, once a week with one another, and they shared stuff and they talked. And I think that's still the case. And so I think they do share information and stuff, but obviously three of them are trying to have a season, and two of them are trying to have a spring season. And I think the two that are trying to have a spring season probably pretty badly would like the other three to come along with them. And so I'm sure that's fractured some things. I'm sure there's some animosity there among them. And it really all started too back in early July, when Kevin Warren pulled the plug going conference only, or made the decision to go conference only, and really didn't tell any of his other Power Five mates there. And so that, I think that ruffled some feathers, and I don't know if that resulted in part of how he handled the next big decision, which was to pull the plug completely on a fall season, because he did talk about that on a Power Five call, and that's kind of how it leaked, or at least how it leaked to us, as he was trying to engage in these other Power Five commissioners to, hey, come along with us. We're going to cancel the fall season. Here are the reasons why. It kind of backfired a little bit. It got out there. But to get back to your question, I think they're still talking. They obviously now have very different plans in probably different thoughts on what the other is doing. So I think there probably is a little friction right now.
So from what go ahead, Cease.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so from what you're hearing and from your own personal opinion, what do you feel like college football looks like this fall, especially in the SEC, but you kind of have to lump the ACC and the Big 12 in with that together. What do you think that college football looks like? How long do you think it lasts? Fans, what does the whole experience look like in your opinion?
I've been thinking for a while that we're going to start the season, and now that we're roughly a week away from the start of the season, FBS kicks off with Southern Miss and South Alabama, I believe, on the 3rd of September, next Thursday. So it feels like we're going to start a season. I'll put it this way: with every passing day, as we get closer to the start of the season, I get more confident that we are going to kick off and start the season. But also with every passing day, I get less confident that we're going to complete a season. It just feels, and you've seen some of the interruptions already in practices and things, and some schools just 2 weeks out of playing a game have suspended their workouts, and Oklahoma doesn't have a position group, and it's some teams have 20 plus cases of positive right now, and maybe a fourth of the teams in quarantine. So we're going to have those things happen during the season as well, and they're going to lead to interruptions and postponements. And while conferences have built in weeks to move games around, I don't know if they built in enough, especially the SEC. And so at certain points, it's hard for me to see us getting through a season, certainly getting through a season with all the teams that started the season. That it's going to be a hurdle.
Following up on that, because this is going to be my question. If you were the czar of college football, when would you have started football, and how many games would teams play? Would they play conference only? Would you add 1 or 2 non-conference? And I'm just interested if you started now, later, wait for the spring, December. And how many fans would you allow to go to games? If you're in charge, what would you do?
Yeah, obviously, I don't know the particulars, especially when it comes to fans, because these schools are, I understand that from a financial perspective, they're trying to make a little money. It is a business, and I get that part of it. But man, you talk to doctors, and they think that the SEC and other places are just insane for having any fans at all. I mean, it's they calling it a disaster. Just the words they're using, it's pretty clear that they don't think that there should be fans. So if I was the czar, I probably wouldn't allow, just based on medical experts I've talked to, I probably wouldn't allow very many fans, if any at all. I think what the SEC did is probably something along the lines of what I would do. Start the season in late September, early October. I would probably only play 8 games, maybe over 10 or 11 weeks instead of 10 over 11 weeks. I think I'd probably play 8 over 11 weeks to give me time to move around games, because I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and play the hypothetical that there isn't a virus and that college football is going to be just fine, even though the SEC is going to play the full SEC schedule. What do you see from the Aggies, and what do you see from the SEC West football-wise, and how that might shake out in a 10-game all SEC schedule?
Man, it's crazy. It is going to be one of the perks of all of this is seeing an SEC team play 10 other SEC teams in one season. We obviously don't get that regularly, and it is probably the cool part of this. For teams, not so much. I guess it's going to be an incredible grind, and I'm trying to think of who A&M picked up in the
Florida
draw there. Okay. So so not a great one. I mean, Tennessee's supposed to be kind of on the up climb there, and Florida, one of the favorites to win the East. So that, in already having Alabama and in Auburn in LSU on the schedule, that's tough. I remember making a list of the new additions, and I think A&M was around the middle as far as the difficulty, but you add in the other ones in the SEC West, and all of a sudden A&M has one of the hardest schedules there is. So if you go 7-3 this year, you could have a good football team. I mean, we could have some pretty good football teams like A&M go 7-3 or even 6-4. That's just how it's gonna work. But it should be interesting. I think I was at the A&M Clemson game. I guess it was a couple of years ago, the overtime game down on the sideline. And I remember thinking, man, this Kellen Mond is like an incredible athlete. And it's been fun to kind of watch him improve. And I know he's had some lulls last season, but it seems like this is supposed to be the year. It's unfortunate that it comes when you have 10 SEC games. So again, I don't know what a good season is when you have 10 SEC games, but I mean, I'm thinking you're going to see some top 10 nationally ranked teams be 7-3.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, did you see the national championship coming for Ed Orgeron? Did you think, a lot of us laughed, it's like, you looked what he did at Ole Miss and all that. Did Did you see that coming? Do you think that before that you thought, man, this guy's really a good coach?
No, I did not see a national championship coming. That was something, yeah, that I really didn't see coming down the pipe. Ed is known as obviously a great motivator and a great recruiter. I think he did learn a lot from Ole Miss about delegating, especially the offensive game plan. And I think he showed he did a good job of that last year with Joe Brady and Steven Zminger, and kind of handing the controls to Joe Burrow, which obviously was a huge pickup. That's the thing that I think gets overlooked. Ed Orgeron's decision making, especially last year, leading up to last year, was bold and risky, and it paid off. The hiring of Joe Brady, overhauling a archaic offense that had been, ground and pound for years, decades, and turning it into this air raid. That was a huge, risky move. Bringing in Joe Burrow when he had some talent already in the quarterback room, knowing that he needed to improve it. So when it comes to that, it's easy to see, okay, national championship caliber talent and all this stuff. But when you look at Ed's past, it was something you just didn't necessarily see coming. But he clearly had learned a lot from Ole Miss, and now he's got LSU as this kind of recruiting beast, and it's going to be tough to slow down.
Ross, I was interested. What were your thoughts when you heard that, the SEC might add A&M? You go back to 2012, and now that we are at Baton Rouge, you're at SI. What do you think about A&M's move to the SEC now that we've seen it for 8 years? I'm always interested in someone's outside looking in. What do you think about A&M and the SEC, which, a decade ago would have never thought about almost?
When all that was happening, I was actually covering Mizzou, and so it was interesting
to
be there. Yeah, it was interesting to be there because that decision, and even people I think there would tell you, didn't make a whole lot of sense. Just as far as the fit, the cultural fit, as bad as maybe, or as peculiar as a move that was for Missouri, it was as it was as sensible for A&M, I think. I mean, the culture and the fan base and the history and the pedigree of A&M football, it made sense at the time when kind of Mizzou didn't. I remember thinking that. And, since it's all happened, which it's been, since 2012 was the first season, I don't know really what to make out of what they've gone through. I don't know if I expected A&M to come in, especially in the SEC West, and compete for a championship. But the amount of money they had there, I probably expected a little more out of them. And maybe we'll get that this year. Maybe we'll get that in the coming years with Jimbo. There's a reason they hired him and paid him all that money. So maybe we'll get it. But to me, it always had made sense of a move, just from a perspective of the culture there and the love for football and the fan base and the money in athletics in general. It made a lot more sense than Mizzou and the SEC.
I got two more questions for you, and we can get you out of there, barring Cease having anything else. First, let's start off with, it's been about a year since Scott Woodward moved over from A&M to LSU. What has his impact been over that first year, and how well has he been received, and just his overall work in year one at LSU?
From everything, and obviously I'm not there anymore, but from everything I've heard is he's been received incredibly well, like you would have thought he would, because he obviously is a Baton Rouge native, LSU grad, had been there. So you kind of expected that to be a really kind of good fit, round peg in a round hole type of thing. And it does seem like that's what's happened. Everybody likes working around Scott. He's built a staff around him that seems to be working pretty good. He's got his hands full with a certain head basketball coach. So that should be interesting to monitor down the stretch here. But he's worked, from everything I've heard, worked really well with all the coaches, specifically football. I mean, he's very he's hands-on, but not hands-on. So he's at a lot of practices in football. He's around the facility a lot, but I don't know that he micromanages anything. But he's certainly there. He's certainly there to help in any way. And Scott is not afraid, as you guys know, to spend money, and that is something at LSU that's a welcome change from the last athletic director, who could be fairly tight every now and then.
Yeah. And then finally, this is the way I kind of wrapped up with everyone we've talked with. This, of course, going back this year when we were finding little bits of sports things to write about, but then also having to fill more content. It was the summer of nostalgia. So looking back on your career, do you have one specific event or moment or funny story that you can share, and or favorite athlete that you've covered that kind of sticks out to you as just one of the highlights of your career so far? We're looking for funny stories. We're looking for impressive stories, the thing that might be the first chapter of your memoirs.
Yeah. Well, being a beat writer covering Les Miles and then at Orgeron, in the way in which they talk, their personalities in general, it is something that will forever be with me. It was, and then covering the transition from one to the other, breaking the news about Les being fired and then following up with Ed's hiring. All that was crazy. That was a crazy year. I know I lost some hair that week and in that year, but those are two guys that certainly were in a lot of ways fun to cover, in just from listening to them, their vernacular and how they used and misused the English language is always fun. As far as like an athlete, Leonard Fournette obviously is probably the best player I guess I've ever covered or been around. The years I covered, all of his 3 years at LSU, and it was incredible to watch him play. It was always fun. He was obviously an electric player, and so yeah. But I'll always go back to my relationship, which still holds pretty good with Les Miles and Ed Orgeron, and they're two characters in college sports that I was lucky enough to be around for a little while.
Yeah, I didn't want to lead you too much, but do you have a good Les Miles story? I think everyone enjoys a good Mad Hatter or a best quote he has that sticks out to you.
I don't even know where to start. I remember, well, I mean, one of the things that sticks out, I think beginning the 2016 season was the Monday of the first game week, and he had his press conference. He was like 30 minutes late, and he actually never even showed up. And we were told that he drank too much coffee and so had to be taken to the hospital, which makes no sense. And years later found out that it's a little more of a health issue. And now I hear him talk, and as Kansas coach, and I wonder if he still has health issues, because Les is just not making much sense these days from what I've seen. But there's just so many, instances. I remember talking to him about Cuba. He took a trip to Cuba, one of the spring breaks by himself, took a trip to Cuba and was talking about how, if he were president of Cuba, how he would change the country and all this. Les is a little more political than most people think. But I mean, there's just endless stories about Les. He's the prototypical, like, old mentality, old school football coach that will probably never ever change. And I'm not sure if he'll ever master, even though he's like 65, master the English language.
Cece, got anything else?
Nope. I was just going to tell our viewers, the way Ross works is I'm a late riser, and during this epidemic, Travis would give me the cliff notes of what Ross had reported or send them to me. So, and you were that way when you were at Baton Rouge. We had to check your stuff all the time. So I'm just telling the folks out there, you might want to go to si.com to keep abreast of this. And we appreciate you taking time with us, Ross.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate the compliments, guys.
Yeah. And Ross, what's your Twitter? What's the way that people can get a hold of you and see your stuff?
Yeah, you can follow me. It's just my name at Ross Dellenger and si.com.
There you go. There you go. Ross, thanks so much for taking so much time. Like Cecil, you're on the front line of everything that's happening right now. So people need to check out your stuff. And I'm sure we'll be checking in with you down the line. Hopefully we'll see you in a press box here sometime soon.
All right, guys. Sounds good.
All right. Take care.
All right. See y'all later.